No, I drove him away. And I'm gonna be 40.
When?
Someday.
In 8 years.
But it's there.
Hello and welcome to 80s Movie Montage. This is Derek.
And this is Anna.
40. Can you imagine? That's, wow.
It's like on your deathbed. Yeah. But, this is... Oh, okay, so the movie.
Yeah, that was...
We haven't mentioned the movie yet.
Sally talking to Harry in When Harry Met Sally. Wow.
We've never done that before. No. So that is our movie for today. And this is, probably one of the more iconic rom-coms that came out of the 80s.
Yeah. I think in some ways it got a lot of notoriety because of that scene. Not the scene that we just played, but if you've ever seen the movie, you know what scene I'm talking about.
The deli scene.
The deli scene, yeah.
The I'll have what she's having scene.
Yeah, that scene became bigger than the movie in the same way that the boombox scene became bigger than Say Anything.
It is a appropriate comparison, I would say.
Thank you.
Yeah. And, it just snuck into the 80s, 1989.
Yeah.
And so let's get started. Let's dive in, because I definitely want to get to our super awesome conversation with our special guest.
Yeah.
Okay. Like I mentioned, 1989. And what is very special about this film is the screenwriter of it. There's a lot of things that make this film very special.
But what's most special?
What is, in my personal opinion, one of the special things about it is that it was written by Nora Ephron, who she's no longer with us. That was a tough pill to swallow when I learned that she had passed away. That was already, I think, like 2012. In any case, she was a prolific and amazing writer. She definitely had her fair share of hits in screenwriting, but she was so much more than a screenwriter. She started out as a journalist, did a lot of magazine pieces, newspaper pieces. She was a novelist. One of her novels was actually adapted into a screenplay and became the film Heartburn.
Oh.
Yeah, so maybe at some point we'll cover that. But in any case, so yes, Nora Ephron is the writer of this. So she did, and our guest Sonal brings this up as well, that she actually got an Oscar nomination for Best Original Screenplay for this very movie. So
deservedly so.
Yeah, absolutely. So among some of her other screenwriting credits, Silkwood, for which she got another Oscar nomination.
Which couldn't be a more different movie.
Than totally.
When you'll go through more of her credits, I'm sure, but that one really stands out as really standing apart for a lot of different reasons in tone and just subject matter.
No, that's a good point. I think a lot of people probably think of her as a, kind of romantic comedy type of writer, but she definitely had range. I don't know. Maybe she just enjoyed doing the rom-coms more. That was her prerogative, but
it's probably more enjoyable to write Sleepless in Seattle than a movie that has become infamous for a Silkwood shower. That's what, if you're that unclean, you would say, I need a Silkwood shower.
Oh, I didn't know that. I've never heard that before. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, so among her credits, Silkwood, I mentioned Heartburn, for which she wrote the novel and the screenplay, Cookie, My Blue Heaven, This Is My Life. She gets her third Oscar nomination for Best Original Screenplay for Sleepless in Seattle, which absolutely adore that movie, but not an 80s movie, so can't cover it in the future. Mixed Nuts, Michael, You've Got Mail. So a lot of vehicles for Meg Ryan, she wrote.
Very much so. Yeah.
So You Got Mail, Hanging Up, Bewitched, and then her last credit was for Julie and Julia. So Silkwood kind of kicked off her writing career with Meryl Streep, and then likewise ended her screenwriting career with Meryl Streep. So, okay, moving on to the director. Now, This guy.
Who's this guy?
We covered him not too long ago because we are talking about Mr. Rob Reiner.
I honestly didn't realize that Rob Reiner was so like. I think when people think of 80s movies, they like one of the first things they think of probably John Hughes. But I didn't realize the extent to which Reiner influenced the 80s. Like, there are some insanely great movies in the 80s from Reiner.
This is the argument I keep making when his name comes up, is that I do not think that enough people give him credit for, just like you just said, how influential and prolific he was during the 80s and just hit after hit after hit. I mean, he had a great batting average in the 80s.
Yeah.
So we just covered not too long ago, this is Spinal Tap. So definitely head over to that episode if you'd like to learn more about another Rob Reiner vehicle. But among his credits,
Or Princess Bride,
which was last year.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've covered a couple of his films already. So this is Spinal Tap, The Sure Thing, Stand By Me. Those two, I'm sure will be covered at some point.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Two incredibly different movies, but so like Efron, the guy has range. Misery. So now we're coming out of the 80s. A Few Good Men, for which, so he didn't get an Oscar nom for like Best Director, but he was among the individuals up for Best Picture. A Few Good Men was up for Best Picture, so he did get an Oscar nom for that.
Okay.
The American President, Ghost in Mississippi, The Story of Us, Rumor Has It, The Bucket List, LBJ, and then one of his most recent is Shock and Awe. So amazing, amazing director. Okay, moving on to a really interesting guy. So cinematography.
Who is it? A really interesting guy?
Really interesting guy.
All right.
So the cinematographer on this film was Barry Sonnenfeld. And the reason why he's a really interesting guy is because he started out as a DP, but then you might know him better, probably a lot of people do, as like a director and producer.
Yeah, the name is familiar. Yeah.
He really transitioned, very successfully so, into these other facets of the industry. So, okay, among his cinematography credits, we have Blood Simple, Compromising Positions.
Oh.
Yeah.
It sounds crazy.
Raising Arizona.
Man, that movie's so good.
Yeah,
we're definitely going to cover that, yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
3 O'Clock High, Throw Mama from the Train.
3 O'Clock High was an interesting one. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, I never seen it.
It's basically about getting bullied.
Oh.
Kind of.
Okay.
Yeah, the guy, he gets his ass kicked at 3.
Oh, you know what? I think I know what movie you're talking about.
Or he's going to.
I haven't seen it, but I think I know what movie you're talking about. Okay. So Throw Mama from the Train, big. Miller's Crossing. He also shot Misery. So he reteams with Rob Reiner. Okay, so then just because, I mean, I normally don't list credits for somebody outside of the manner in which they were involved with.
The credited role.
Yeah, exactly. But I, again, thought that the trajectory of his career was like very unique. And so I did list a couple of his directing credits. So he directed The Addams Family.
Which one?
Like the original one that, what do you mean? Which one?
No. So there's the,
like the Angelica Houston. Yeah. So The Addams Family, this is where I know him from as a director, Get Shorty.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you love that movie.
Love that movie. He directed Men in Black, Men in Black 2, Men in Black 3.
Okay.
Here's the thing, though, that really irks me about Men in Black. So if you go to, not the actual movies, but if you go to IMDb and see the way that they're listed, Men in Black 2, the designation of 2 is written as like Roman numerals.
Yeah.
But then Men in Black 3 is just like
the number 3.
Yeah, the number 3. It's really irritating.
What I would want it to be is Men in Black, lowercase, spelled out 3, parenthetical, the number 3.
Okay. I mean, it's just like pick a style.
Yeah.
Pick a style, people. And then he must really love Will Smith because he also directed Wild Wild West.
Well,
so he's done definitely more current work, but those are like some of the biggies of his directing work.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's where normally I would bring up the composer on a given film. This movie has no credited composer.
It kind of has one song that they just kind of rehash or replay in slightly different ways throughout like the entirety of the movie.
Well, the closest that we get to composer is the credit of special musical performances and arrangements.
Okay.
By a very young Harry Connick Jr.
Yeah, he was going wild on the piano in those opening credits.
Yeah, so part of what kicked off his career, if I'm remembering correctly, he also was involved in Sleepless in Seattle. He has a very identifiable voice, but what's funny about him...
He's dreamy, I think.
Oh, he's very dreamy.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about him is that I think a lot of people have come to know him as much for his acting work.
Yeah.
As his musical work.
Yeah.
So, and I actually did a real quick look. Now he has a lot of titles like between, this one and just like other soundtrack, that sort of thing. So he has 38 soundtrack credits and 35 acting credits. So it's kind of almost even.
Okay.
So Harry Connick Jr. Okay. Film editing by a gentleman with the name of, I don't know, I'm saying that way.
Who is it?
Robert Layton.
Okay, I was expecting like a really difficult to pronounce name, and like, are you just like mentally like processing the
I'm just
pronunciation?
Gearing everybody up, having pins and needles, We
made it.
So this is a gentleman that we have brought up before, and he both has a pretty impressive resume of work, but then also it's very clear that he has had a very close relationship with Rob Reiner because he's pretty much his editor on everything. So among some of his credits, The Sure Thing, Stand By Me, we brought him up for Princess Bride. Mm-hmm. Bull Durham, so not exclusive to Rob Reiner, but Misery, A Few Good Men, for which he got an Oscar nomination for Best Editing. Nice. North, The American President, Ghost of Mississippi, The Story of Us, so showing you this ongoing relationship with Reiner. And then at some point in time, because I know that Reiner and Christopher Guest are friends, he must have hopped onto the Christopher Guest train because he... later in his career has edited a lot of his work. So he edited Best in Show, A Mighty Wind, comes back to Reiner, Rumor Has It, For Your Consideration, which is another Christopher Guest film, The Bucket List, Now You See Me, and A Dog's Purpose.
If this podcast has taught me anything, it's that all you need to really succeed in Hollywood is to do a pretty good job with a director who ends up being like...
hugely successful.
Yeah. That's all you got to do.
That's it.
It's pretty simple.
Quite simple.
There you go.
I mean, that is something that comes up. I don't know if we've covered a film where it kind of hasn't shown itself to be true, where there are these,
common.
These relationships that just endure. And whether that's between, like here, a director and an editor, or a director and a screenwriter, director and a composer. I mean, we've talked about it a lot.
I think it's come up in the context of some of the, directors. And, I think when we're talking about James Cameron in particular, but to some extent, I'm sure all of them, when they have a process that works, they just want to keep doing that. Why wouldn't you? So
I mean, if it ain't broke. So and it makes a lot of sense because especially for a director, you have so many balls in the air.
You have enough that you're not going to be, that you have to figure out. So
if there's something that can kind of, as much as anything can be a sure thing.
Yeah.
Sorry
like
for
the movie?
Pun.
Yeah. No, I got it.
Where you're like, okay, I know what it's like to work with this person. They put out a good quality of work. I can trust them. I can rely on them. then that's just one less thing on a very long list of things that they have to be worrying about.
We've seen it for so many of these movies where
Yeah.
you just follow the chain of all the people who've worked in there, all the same people.
Yep. And it kind of doesn't matter as far as genre goes. Like,
No.
it crosses all genres, and yeah. Okay, so moving on. Like, we're already at the stars of the film.
All right.
Yeah. So, kind of the first time that we've brought him up. We did very, very briefly bring him up for this is Spinal Tap.
Yeah, Miracle Max.
Oh, man. Thank you for... I'm glad you're here because I totally forget. I mean, it was a year ago.
But you're right. He was in both, yeah.
He was in both, yeah. I was thinking just more recently with us mentioning his little mime cameo in This is Spinal Tap. I don't know if I've said the name.
Money.
Billy Crystal. Mime is Money. Yes, it's such a great...
Mime is Money might be as funny as anything that happens in Princess Bride.
It's a great line. So yes, Billy Crystal, who plays Harry Burns. And I mean, just like how Rob Reiner seems to have a nice relationship with Leighton, it's clear that these two guys are friends. They've worked together on a ton of stuff. So as far as Billy Crystal's career, though, so he pretty much started off in television. And I'm curious, I don't know this for sure, but I put this down just because I was like, maybe. So he did have an appearance on All in the Family.
Oh, interesting.
So I don't know if that's where him and Reiner met when Reiner was an actor on that show. Possibly. So he has that little stint. And then, I mean, of his TV work, well, outside of, and I'll get to it in a second, if like a TV series, a sitcom type of series, Soap was his big...
Yeah, that was huge.
Yeah, and it was huge because of the character he played. He played a gay man. And I think Soap was like late 70s, I want to say.
It was,
so
yeah. It looked like it ended in the early 80s.
Pretty groundbreaking.
Yeah.
So that's pretty awesome. So like we mentioned, he has a really fun cameo in This is Spinal Tap.
Morty the Mime.
And so the other TV work that he's done, he was on Saturday Night Live for a long time. I mean, his credit for Saturday Night Live, I think, goes from like 84 to like sometime in the 2010s, like with like guest appearances and stuff. So he, I think he used to be more of a regular on it and, comes back occasionally. Didn't
he host the Oscars for like ever?
Yeah, I didn't add that, but I do think that is important.
Whoops.
No. I'm glad that you brought that up because that is important. I just, I guess I didn't list it as a role per se because he's just himself.
It was a big deal when that stopped because he had done it. I feel like he had done it long enough that it was like a whole thing when that had to roll over.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a couple instances over the history of the Academy Awards where it kind of became identified with one particular host, like Bob Hope for a really long time was the host. And you're right, Billy Crystal also was. And, we've gone, I want to say like 3 years in a row without a host of the Oscars. I mean, the Oscars...
We went like a year without actual movies in theaters.
This is true. I won't go down the rabbit hole of like what might need to get fixed with the Oscars, but
that'll be a very special episode.
That will be a very special episode. He was fun. He didn't take it seriously. Like I remember when he hosted.
Host.
Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like every once in a while I read that they've, I don't know, the powers that be have reached out to him to see if he's still interested.
Nope.
Yeah, I think maybe that ship has sailed for him. So,
yeah.
Okay. But thank you for bringing that up. I'm glad you did. So among his film work, because then he pretty much transitions exclusively into film.
Yeah, I mean, I look at his progression from stand-up to TV to film. So he kind of like laid out a bit of a blueprint that...
Yeah, no, I'd agree. So Running Scared, and as you mentioned, and I forgot, The Princess Bride, Throw Mama from the Train.
Yeah.
He did City Slickers and City Slickers 2, The Legend of Curly's Gold, Mr. Saturday Night, Forget Paris, Deconstructing Harry, My Giant. Do you remember that movie, My Giant?
I kind of do.
Yeah. I don't think I ever saw it, but I
No.
like remember the like VHS box image of it. Analyze this and analyze that. He was really good in those films. I thought that was a good pairing between him and De Niro.
Mm-hmm.
They did really well together. And then probably maybe for a younger generation, perhaps they don't know his face, but they maybe know his voice because he's one of the monsters in Monsters Inc.
Yeah. Wasn't there a story about, like, didn't he have an opportunity to be in like Toy Story or something, and he...
Oh, I don't know.
I feel like, don't even take it with a grain of salt. Take
Okay.
it with whatever is less than 1 grain of 1 salt.
Like,
But I feel like there's something there about, like, he had that opportunity and he didn't take it, and so he took the next one, which was still a good opportunity.
I feel like maybe, I don't know if you're like inceptioning me, but like maybe I've seen that story. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. I feel like a lot of people maybe turned down the original Toy Story stuff and they were like, oh, that was a big mistake. I will take anything you give to me, Disney, after the fact.
He was offered the Buzz Lightyear role and turned it down.
Oh, wow.
And then after seeing the finished movie, he's like, well, that was a mistake.
Well, I guess I'll say, okay, I don't know if I see that voice for Buzz Lightyear. I do think Tim Allen has done a good job with Buzz Lightyear.
I think Tim Allen did a great job.
Yeah.
And Crystal, in fact, said that it was the biggest mistake of his career to not not take
I mean,
it.
what we're all talking about is like monetarily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I look, I already have a difficult time in some ways believing Billy Crystal. Like, he is very much Harry in When Harry Met Sally.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe that he is that character. I just have a difficult time believing some of the attributes of that character that I am supposed to believe. And in a similar way, I don't know that I would believe, or like, I think Tim Allen fit that kind of character for Buzz Lightyear, you know?
Yeah, I do too.
So, and he was great in Monsters, Inc. So
Yeah, he was great. So it all worked out.
yeah.
He got his payday. It all worked out. Okay. So moving on to Meg Ryan, who plays Sally Albright. And, you know, we bring this up with Sonal. She was very early into her career when she got this huge role. So among some of her work preceding When Harry Met Sally, we have, I had to put this one down, and I don't know if we've watched it, Amityville 3D.
No.
We will.
I've never seen that.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to get some old 3D glasses for that. I bet. Yeah.
I did know this. I knew that for a stint she was on the soap opera As the World Turns. So I was familiar with that work.
She played 2 people?
Oh, did she?
Betsy Stewart, Betsy Mont. Maybe there's a marriage involved.
Oh, that sounds like a marriage.
I want it to be 2 Betsy's that just have different last names.
It's a soap opera.
Anything.
Literally anything is possible. Yeah. Probably some people knew her from her bit in Top Gun.
Her character in Top Gun was like just almost a criminal underrepresentation of what she's capable of as an actor.
You know, it's just a total aside. How come when you're talking about actors and their work, you say they're in a movie, but they're on a TV show?
I don't know. But I know what my call to action is going to be.
Okay. So then we have Inner Space, DOA, Joe versus the Volcano. So this kicks off.
Are you going to skip the Presidio again?
Oh.
Such a good
movie. What do you
movie.
mean again?
It's like the second time it's come up.
What? During what other episode?
I don't even know.
Okay. Sorry. What you just did. So, okay. The Presidio. My apologies. She did Joe versus the Volcano. And so this was, I believe, her first teaming with Tom Hanks.
What a weird movie.
Yeah. The Doors, which I'm going to have to revisit that. I don't know what roles she plays in that, but...
I do remember from that, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I'm assuming it's a dramatic role.
Yeah, a pretty prominent role, yeah.
Is she like his love interest?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Sorry, Meg Ryan. It's been a real long time since I've watched that movie.
That's
so, okay. Prelude to a Kiss, which that's a weird movie.
It is.
And then, again, probably my favorite of all her roles is Sleepless in Seattle, where she reteams with Tom Hanks. Love that movie. She does several kind of serious turns again. Flesh and Bone, When a Man Loves a Woman. She kind of jumps back and forth between her, kind of what she's known. I mean, she was known for a while as like America's sweetheart.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then maybe Julia Roberts then took that title from her. I don't know if anybody currently holds it.
Is any okay? Well, I have a second call to action.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. So she goes from Flesh and Bone and When a Man Loves a Woman to IQ, French Kiss. She returns to more dramatic work with Courage Under Fire. I think she got a lot of acclaim for that.
I think so. And I just wanted to take a quick step back to IQ because I think that's the one where she set up with Tim Robbins by Albert Einstein.
Correct.
Got it.
Yes, exactly. Hijinks ensues. Yeah, absolutely. City of Angels, You've Got Mail. So her last pairing with Tom Hanks. And, I meant to bring it up with Sonal because we were kind of on this topic where we were talking about the way that people interact through technology nowadays versus, the more personal interactions that occurred because of the lack of technology in the 80s. And I thought that this was an interesting kind of middle ground because You've Got Mail was just with like, the whole AOL was just beginning. And so it was like just the cusp of this forever change in the way that we communicate with each other.
Nothing makes me feel older than thinking, yeah, things were kind of better before this stuff. Before fill in the blank.
The good old days. Everybody has the good old days.
I'm like, oh my God.
She, I guess, so to speak, reteams with Nora Ephron because she is in Hanging Up. And then one of her... It's not really recent. She's kind of stepped away, I think. I mean, she's still working, but I think she's very selective in what she chooses to do. And one of her more recent credits that, again, isn't super recent is Kate and Leopold. But, I mean, huge star. Huge star.
Yeah.
So she's great. Okay. Moving on to yet another huge star, Carrie Fisher.
She's great
Marie.
in this. Yeah.
She's great.
She's absolutely phenomenal in this. I really, I've said this, in our discussion with Sonal, but I just love seeing her in such a complete, role that's not Princess Leia.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool because, if it's okay to say this, you had not seen this movie from start to finish before we did just that for the podcast.
It's possible that I had seen the entire movie if I collectively took all of the different times where I saw a few minutes of it and then didn't watch all of it. So yeah, it's the first time I've watched it from start to finish.
Yeah, and it was really cool to see how much you enjoyed her performance.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. Yeah, I mean, we, again, have very recently covered her because she was part of the Blues Brothers, which was just a couple months ago. But you know what? It's Carrie Fisher. So let's go through.
She didn't even have a name in that.
Oh, in the Blues Brothers. No, she's Mystery Woman.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of her very earliest credits was Shampoo. And then, of course, everybody knows her as Princess Leia slash General Organa later in the series from Star Wars. And so we have Episode 4, A New Hope, Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. In between Empire and Return of the Jedi, that's when she does the Blues Brothers. Yep. And like I just said, she comes back for Return of the Jedi. And then she, is for a long time done with the Star Wars stuff. And so she does have a lot of interesting credits. I mean, Hannah and Her Sisters, The Burbs. She happens to be in Drop Dead Fred. She's really great in Soap Dish. Yeah. I like her in Soap Dish. Scream 3. I mentioned this again very recently when we were talking about the Blues Brothers. Heartbreakers.
Oh, yeah.
Because I do have a fondness for that film. Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, which when we brought that up last time was my first... It was like my epiphany moment of realizing, that's a play on The Empire Strikes Back.
Kevin Smith is such a huge fan of all that stuff. So it absolutely was part. If you look at the art for it, yeah.
Embarrassing that I didn't put that together sooner. Charlie's Angels, Full Throttle, The Women. And then she comes back for Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens, as well as 8, Last Jedi. However, as most people, pretty much everybody, knows, she left us far too soon. I said that correctly.
You did.
And basically, we brought this up actually during the Blues Brothers episode because she doesn't have a credit for The Rise of Skywalker, even though there is imagery of her in the movie, and that was just pure movie magic. They took, they kind of had to Frankenstein it a little bit to make it work. And so for whatever reason, it just didn't like qualify as a true credit for her. So interesting what they're able to accomplish with technology.
Yeah.
But it was really sad. I mean, I really don't know. I haven't done that deep dive into like what maybe the story would have been had she stayed with us. What changes they had to make, and then also she did, voice work. She was on Family Guy, and then her final credit was Wonderwell. So, okay, moving on to, unfortunately, another really amazing actor who is no longer with us, Bruno Kirby, who plays Jess. So he plays Harry's best friend, just like how Marie plays Sally's best friend in the film. And so he also kind of started out in television. He kind of goes back and forth a little bit more than Billy Crystal did in his own career.
Yeah,
so
he Crystal, once he made that leap, he
kind of just stays in film. But he was on a TV series called The Super.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You know what I always forget is that he plays the young Clemenza in The Godfather Part 2.
Yes.
And he's really good.
He is.
He's really good. And I guess I never think about that. But yeah, he's really good at like slipping into these roles where you might not even realize it's him. Like Yeah. So among some of his other film work, and this is kind of a funny coincidence again. So not this one, Where the Buffalo Roam, but he's also in Spinal Tap.
He is. He's the limo driver, right?
Yeah, he's the limo driver. So he has a great part in that. He's in Birdie, Good Morning Vietnam, We're No Angels. So then he comes back to TV. So first he does It's Gary Shandling's Show, which that is like really tough to say.
If you think that's tough to say, just imagine it in the theme song where they just sing that phrase over and over again.
Oh, is that? I never watched it.
Yeah.
So, okay. So first he's on that. I'm like kind of pointing that out for a reason. Then he does some more films. He's in The Freshman. He's also in City Slickers, The Basketball Diaries, Donnie Brasco. And then he comes back to TV for The Larry Sanders Show.
Which is kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
But maybe that's the one. God, no. I think so. The Gary Shandling Show is the one that had the crazy theme, and Larry Sanders was like a parody of those kinds of shows, I think.
And they both star Gary Shandling.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I'm guessing they were probably good friends.
I hope so.
I mean, I don't know that for sure, but and then he also his final credit was a appearance on the TV series Entourage. So. Okay, so those are our big four. Like, those are the four actors who really...
They drive the movie.
Great way of putting it. But we have a couple more that I wanted to just bring up before we move on. So this gentleman is mentioned when we're talking to Sonal because I just thought this was a really fun bit of trivia. We have Stephen Ford, who plays Joe. So this is the guy that Sally was dating and thought she was going to marry. And then he breaks her heart when he tells her, very cruelly, calls her up just to tell her he's getting married. So Stephen Ford is the son of President Gerald Ford.
Nice. I wish we had more presidents with sons who would do something that benefits us all like this. And
yeah, right.
Just have like a solid role in a rom-com. No need to destroy the world, sons of presidents.
So, and he's had a pretty prolific career. I mean, as we were kind of saying with Sonal, maybe not necessarily like leading man type roles, but that doesn't mean that his impact is any less. Every character brings something to the project.
Yeah.
So some of his credits: Cattle, Annie, and Little Britches, which I thought was fun. Escape from New York.
Bridges or Britches?
Britches.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Escape from New York. Excellent movie.
Young Doctors in Love.
Oh.
The 11th Commandment. Heat.
Hold on a second. How many were there? What would it even be?
That actually was why I was like, oh, I wonder what this movie is about.
Yeah.
Because I was like curious what that 11th commandment would be. So I actually it did have my curiosity piqued. So he is in Heat. I'd like to go back to Heat and see where he is in that one. We do that a lot.
Officer Bruce.
Okay. Contact. Same Z's. I'd like to go back into that movie and see where he is. And like actually for almost all the rest of these films. Starship Troopers, Armageddon, The Rage, Carrie 2, Black Hawk Down, Transformers. And then like we mentioned with Sonal, so like his probably most substantial like project was the fact that he also was on a soap opera, The Young and the Restless, for 21 years.
If you can get that kind of gig, that is
that's money in the pocket.
Longevity.
Yeah. From 1982 to 2003, he was on that show. And then just in addition to that, though, he's done a ton of just TV appearances.
Can you imagine if Netflix had a soap opera and it ended after 3 seasons?
Yeah. All right. So moving on to Alice. So if you're not like, who's Alice in this movie? She's the one that is like kind of this.
She's the other friend of Sally.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. She's the other friend. So like when Sally reveals that her and Joe have broken up at lunch, brunch, wherever they are, Alice is that third person who's there with her and Marie.
Yeah, she's the one that didn't happen to have a Rolodex full of men just
Exactly.
at her side, ready to go.
Exactly. So also has like a really kind of prolific resume of work. So the actress's name is Lisa Jane Persky.
Okay.
I think I'm saying that.
I think so.
Yeah. And so among her credits, The Great Santini, Love in a Taxi, American Pop, The Cotton Club. I do know her from these next 2 credits. The Sure Thing. Do you know who she is? She's Tim Robbins' wife.
Oh, okay.
I believe. And then in Peggy Sue Got Married.
Or did she?
Peggy Sue?
Yeah, no, isn't that in the title? Or will she?
Well, what?
Yeah, no, that's part of it.
So she's in Peggy Sue Got Married.
Yeah.
The Big Easy. She was on a TV series called Private Eye. She goes back to film. She's in Great Balls of Fire, Coneheads, Destiny Turns on the Radio, and samesies as Stephen Ford. She has a lot of TV appearances.
So I'm just so you know, I'm not crazy. The poster for Peggy Sue Got Married says Peggy Sue Got Married, and then in tiny little letters it says italicized, or will she?
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
No problem.
It's like
I'm like, wait, am I?
I'm gonna just fly right by that one. But okay, and then lastly, we have Michelle Nicastro, who plays Amanda. So this is Harry's girlfriend when they're leaving college.
Oh, I'm so glad that you gave her some credit. She got no credit in this movie.
She got no credit.
Even Meg Ryan, Sally, forgets who the hell her friend is.
Yeah.
Without her, this movie's not happening.
Yeah. So an actress who, had started off, I think, with a really strong career. And unfortunately, she also is no longer with us and died very young of breast cancer. But among her credits, she has Body Rock, Bad Guys, another soap opera. She was on Santa Barbara.
Interesting.
She did a voice on The Swan Princess. And I think that had a couple kind of like one-offs from it as well. And then she, like, kind of the same as these other actors and actresses we were just talking about. Lots of TV appearances.
Yeah, I just want to highlight she has some amazing TV credits. Airwolf, Charles in Charge, Who's the Boss, Knight Rider, Simon and Simon. My God.
I'm glad you brought those up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad that you listed those. And, the people like Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan are not going to be soon forgotten in the history of cinema. So I like bringing up these individuals who they had their own careers. They had their own, time in the industry. And it's just really unfortunate that she left us too soon. So Michelle Nicastro. Okay. Film synopsis.
Oh, yeah. Is there a synopsis for this?
Oof. Sorry, I'm influencing you, but I'm just going to read it.
Okay. Lay it on me.
Harry and Sally have known each other for years and are very good friends, but they fear sex would ruin the friendship.
Man.
That's literally it.
I don't know what you actually write for the synopsis of this, but I like going into the poster for the movie.
Sure.
And I think this poster is actually, in some ways, the best representation of kind of like the underlying theme that starts with Billy Crystal just saying like a man and a woman can't be friends because of sex. So it just says on the poster, can two friends sleep together and still love each other in the morning? I actually like that more as both the synopsis and just as like the underlying like issue that's raised in the movie.
Yeah, I mean,
I know it's not a synopsis.
it's a tagline.
It is a tagline.
But I agree with you that
But if I wrote it next to the word synopsis, it could be the synopsis.
I mean, it's just like a really weird, I don't know, like they fear sex. I don't know if I've exactly picked up on in the film that like that's an underlying current throughout the entirety. Like,
No, they
they're
don't
not,
fear
like,
that.
Yeah, they're not hanging out thinking, oh man, if we have sex together. Like, it's a discussion that comes up in kind of a abstract manner. I mean, they do kind of talk about it more as far as like the two of them in that first interaction, that first time that they meet each other.
Yeah.
But it's just, I don't think it really is indicative of what the film is really about.
I think Meg Ryan's character would probably think throughout a lot of the movie that if they did have sex, and that's all he ever really wanted was just to have sex with her. And I think maybe from Harry's side, he would think, well, I actually have an actual friendship, and if if it becomes physical, then that will ruin it. So maybe, but they're definitely coming at it from different perspectives. Mm-hmm. So yeah. I think we can agree on one thing, which is that this synopsis is rubbish.
Yeah, we've had a couple bummer synopses.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to write a good synopsis.
It's tough out there. Okay, so montage. You know what's interesting about this film is that we go through a pretty significant like series of flash forwards, kind of. 5
years later.
Yeah, I mean, it starts with them both being 21. They're fresh out of college. Mm-hmm. We have that first interaction between them, and then we fast forward 5 years.
To the airport, right?
To the airport. And then we have that kind of interaction where they're talking on the plane and that sort of thing. And then we bump up another 5 years.
Yeah.
So these are not montages.
No, there was no like
just a time skip.
Raiders music with a map and a plane flying by.
Exactly.
Sure.
So these are just time skips.
Yeah.
And then we pretty much stay in present time, which is them both being in their like early 30s.
Yeah, I think once we get past the last big time bump, it's kind of weird because then every time something like kind of big happens, I'm like, wait, was there another big time skip?
Yeah, they go through. I would say that once we get to current day, the passage of time gets a little wonky, a little ambiguous. We go through like 2 Christmases.
Because you got to clock it with the hairstyles. Exactly. Does he have a beard? No? Okay.
Yeah, you have to clock it with the hairstyles, the facial hair. And basically, like, the reason why it's a little wonky is because, for instance, when Sally has her breakdown, when she finds out that Joe is getting married and she invites Harry over, you know, she says to him, this is supposed to be his transitional person. And it's like, but hasn't it been like more than a year at this point?
Yeah.
So it's not like she's fresh out of the relationship at this point.
So after that, like, second 5-year skip, it's basically everything covers like, what, maybe like 2 years at the most?
A year and a half?
Yeah, because
it
starts
2 years. Because then also in that time frame, Marie and Jess get married.
We get 2 New Year's Eve things out of it.
Exactly. So I'm gonna say like at least a year and a half.
Okay.
But there is actually a true montage, which is when after they sleep together and they're on the outs with each other, you know, you see like her, and they set it up where like, you know, they initially had Harry with her when she gets her Christmas tree. Now she has to drag her Christmas tree by herself.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. So they do show passage of time in terms of like this like separation between them. So
that's true.
Yeah. But the film does kind of play with time in an interesting way, even outside of montage.
Yeah.
So yeah. You know, we had a couple fun facts. Some of them we've already talked about. We talked about Stephen Ford. We talked with Sonal about just how many times it takes to nail that phone scene between the four of them.
Yeah.
So we'll bring that up with Sonal. But then, I don't know how much people know about like the backstory of this film, but essentially like Rob Reiner and Nora Ephron were really good friends. And so largely these characters are based on them.
That's amazing. I mean, you can bring up the airplane story, right?
Sure. Well, just that one time Nora Ephron, this is after the film came out, she's ordering a drink on a plane, apparently was being very detailed about it. And the flight attendant just said, not knowing who she was like, have you seen When Harry Met Sally?
That's kind of an insult, by the way.
Yeah.
That's
exactly.
That's like basically saying like you're being a little difficult.
I think she probably took it well.
I hope so.
I think she had a sense of humor about herself. Like she was very self-aware. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know how you write a character like Sally without being self-aware if you're like, yeah, this is kind of based on me.
Yeah.
So, and I think that in earlier drafts, they didn't actually get together. And so I don't know if it was just that, like, I don't know what they did, test audiences, whatever. And it was just like, no, they need to be together.
They didn't get together. What do you mean?
They didn't get together.
Harry and Sally?
Yeah.
But what happens then?
I don't know. That's not the film that ended up being made.
That would be When Harry and Sally Never Got Together, which would be a totally different movie.
Okay, but that's not the title of the movie. The title of the movie is not When Harry and Sally Got Together.
Well, I assume that's what the ellipsis at the end stands for. When Harry Met Sally, ...
I appreciate you bringing it up because that brings me to... I don't know if this is like really a fun fact, but apparently they had just the most hellish time trying to come up with the title of this movie.
Yeah.
They could not land on something that they liked.
So they landed on an incomplete sentence.
Yeah, so they landed on When Harry Met Sally, and apparently I put her two names together. Nora Ephron kind of was like, God, I wish we would have went with something else. So she really wasn't a fan of the title of the movie.
I have one other fun fact.
Yeah, sure.
It's half fun and half not fun, but all of the older couples that are like throughout the movie talking about how they like how long they've been together and how they met, real stories, actors.
Yeah.
I thought maybe there was a chance that they were just like the actual couples that they brought in. They seemed pretty good in front of the camera, like too good to just be the real people. But then there's that one couple where the guy literally says nothing and just kind of stares blankly at the camera, and I think he just says his name or something. And that made me think maybe that's real. I don't know.
From what I read, Reiner collected all these stories, and I think he probably would have wanted the actual couples to be the ones on screen telling these stories. Yeah. But probably realized, okay, we're dealing with like older individuals.
There would be a lot involved.
Yeah, who are not used to being in front of a camera.
Yeah.
And so he had to make a call.
Yeah.
And just decided, okay, we'll get actors.
Well, it was executed perfectly.
Yeah. Because you don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So let's dive into our awesome conversation with Sonal.
Let's do it.
All right. We are so incredibly excited to have with us today actor Sonal Shah, whose credits include Scrubs, Superstore, and New Girl. She is currently voicing the character of Poonam on Mira Royal Detective, which is on Disney+. And she also has a development deal with Disney. Sonal, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here. Hello to you both.
We are stoked. We've wanted you on the show for a while. It is just such a joy to have you here. And holy cow, I think we have a lot to jump into. So that's exactly what we're going to do. So as I normally do, I'm just very curious about your very first experience seeing this movie. And just, do you remember it, first of all? Do you remember if it was a film that you did instantly take to? Just kind of your general thoughts about it.
All right. So I am not going to lie. I do not remember when first watched it. However, I rewatched it this week. And what's amazing about When Harry Met Sally is that every time I watch it, it's like when Sonal meets Harry, when Sonal meets Harry meeting Sally for the first time. Every time I see it, it's like, that's, I think, one of the magical the magic of this movie in particular is because every time I watch it, I feel like I'm meeting it for the first time. And like, I see new things and different moments sort of sink in, and I laugh out loud and I cry. It's like everything happens for the first time every time I see it. And that is so cool about this movie. So yeah, to be honest, I don't remember the very first time, but really it could be 2 days ago.
No, I totally agree. I mean, I think one of the reasons why, because I totally understand what you're saying about how every time it kind of washes over you anew. And for me, part of that comes from just the really dynamic and interesting dialogue. And I was very curious. So, like, you're an actor, like, rich, juicy dialogue, I'm assuming, is just, an actor's playground. So when you're watching a movie like this, how do you think about kind of the way that these characters are communicating with each other?
Oh, it's so brilliant. It's just so real. I mean, I like to think of myself. Well, actually, I don't like to think of myself. People have pointed out that I'm like a walking romantic comedy. So, and like I go around the world, kind of I feel like I am these characters, both of them though. Like I feel like I have two, and that's what's so cool about both of these characters is that they're so relatable even now. I mean, this was made in 1989, and it's still so relevant. And so, in terms of the dialogue, like it still sticks. I still have these conversations, and especially the main question of this movie is, can men and women really be friends? And which is fascinating for me because I grew up. I don't know if you know this, but I grew up with. I joke that it's 27 brothers, but really, like I grew up with all guys, and I had my whole life. I have more guy friends than girlfriends. I didn't really feel like I made my first girlfriends until like end of high school, then into college. And it was, but it's so funny to me because my instinct is yes, of course, guys and girls can be friends. All my friends are guys. But now then as an adult, it's different because those guys they're like my brothers. But now, it's just, relationships are different, but I'm really good friends with basically like all my friends' husbands, and I'm really good friends with, I still make, guy friends, but there's a difference now when I'm single and then I meet a guy who is single. That there is definitely a difference, like, and I always, this movie kind of makes me question that, but that's the power of the dialogue in this movie is that I think about it on a normal day, and that's the power. This, Nora Ephron. I mean, she's a genius, and she was, I think, nominated for an Oscar for this in terms of her writing.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and that's yes. So to answer your question in a long-winded way, writers make good writing is a dream for any actor because it makes it so much easier to visualize and jump into that part.
I'm curious because like one thing so Derek and I do the same thing. Like we rewatched it last night. And I feel like, anytime we cover any movie, maybe because I am kind of looking at it in a more critical way in preparation for the podcast, but I'm always noticing new things about any movie we cover. And one thing that kind of stuck out to me on this last viewing, and again, I hope you don't mind that I'm kind of like picking your brain as an actor on this. But
no, not at all.
Okay, cool. Because like as great as the dialogue is, the actors themselves, and I hope I articulate this well enough, they're not like doing a lot. Like they're sitting in a cafe or they're unrolling a rug in Harry's room. You know, like they're doing kind of like not like the conversation is the focus of every single scene and not so much like the actions of the actors. If that makes
with one exception.
What exception?
The batting cages.
Oh, that's true. But even that is like very secondary to the conversation that's being had. And so I'm just curious as an actor, like, is that easier for you when you're in a scene where you know that it's the dialogue that's like front and center? Or do you like to have more of, quote, something to do while you're in a scene?
Well, what's fascinating is that you even kind of just said it. It's true. The conversation is sort of the main character of every scene. Yet in many scenes, there is kind of a business that's happening, like unrolling the rug and at the cafe eating. And, you know, even after her infamous orgasm moment, she she takes a bite and is so nonchalant. But that's like that as an actor, sort of as in the technical aspect of it, is like, okay, so the business is, you know, go back to the salad. And the business is we're unrolling a rug here. The business is the driving. You know, one person is driving. And also car scenes are always so interesting because there's an intimacy that's there because the eyes, you're not staring at each other. You know, the majority of your eyes, of your eye language is out the window or, you know, forward. And so you're kind of listening and talking through your heart. That's how I always feel. Because when you're in a car, it's just like, you can't, that's sort of where the molecules are bouncing from. And, but yeah, like the business quote in that scene is the driving. And then when they're at dinner with the two friends, they're eating, you know, and it's sort of then the moments where they kind of look at each other or they're drinking. And so it's interesting because you're right. There's not major action that's happening, but there's little character businesses that are, you know, that are kind of in many scenes sort of just happening. But that's also such a testament to the actors themselves because they're kind of, it doesn't look like they're doing much, but so much. I feel like it's so filled. Each moment of the movie is so filled. As the movie goes on, it's so filled by their history with each other from that was built in that car ride and then later on. And then it's also just so filled by their actual, you know, feelings for each other. But and even in that one scene where he goes into the accent where they're at the museum, the garden place, you know, they're kind of their business until they like their business in that scene is sort of the accent, you know, and just the fact that they are in this kind of large artistic environment. It's very, you know, it just makes it's sort of like we always talk about as in a scene, the event of the scene. So it's sort of like all of that other stuff is significant until he says, so do you want to have dinner tonight? And then the event is, oh, she has a date. And then they kind of stop all that business, you know, the accent stops, the kind of, you know, and then they have that moment. So it's so cool because like that's what then makes then we know as an actor watching, oh, that's the event of the scene. Like when kind of all the business stops and it's just then you just let the words do the work. I know I'm talking a lot, but one more thing is that it's interesting.
No, as you were talking, like, I don't mean to sound corny, but like it kind of gives me goosebumps because I think there's nothing cooler than listening to somebody who is like an expert in a certain field, like evaluate and talk about what it is that like how they relate to what is happening in a movie. Like that was just like, I was just like hanging on your words because I think it's so interesting.
That was amazing.
So one of my one of huge lesson I learned even in college, when I was a senior in college, I did a production of Three Sisters and I played Olga. And the first line of the play is when father died a year ago today. And I was unable to do it without emotion. And we were in rehearsal and my director, Jonathan Wilson, was like, take it out, take out the emotion. And I was a young actor. I didn't know what I was doing. And I just, every time I said it, father died a year ago, and I would just bring too much, bring stuff to it. And he'd be like, take that 57, take 75. And he was so frustrated with me. And finally he's like, Sonal, let the words do the work. Let the words do the work. And I was like, he's like, this is Chekhov. And that's sort of everything sunk in that moment, the fact that I still remember it. And to the point where then I went and studied Chekhov, like at the Stanislavski school at Harvard after that, because I was so obsessed with words. And in that, when you have words that are so good and dialogue that is so good, you can let the words do the work. And what's so beautiful about that, and in terms of the world of Chekhov and Nora Ephron, is like they write such seemingly simplistic dialogue, but it's all very slice of life.
Yeah.
So when you're working in that genre of slice of life and you're letting the words do the work, that is then the trust. You have to really trust that you are enough. And that, I think, is the kind of the journey of many actors, is learning and figuring out how to trust that they're enough and that they don't need to bring so much, especially when the dialogue is so good. You do need to bring history, story, circumstance, but you don't need to. My current mentor, John Rosenfeld, always says, you don't need to bring sand to the beach. And so it's like, if there's already love there, you don't need to bring more love. And me, Sonal, personally, I'm a little quirky. I don't need to act like a quirky. I am, so that's why I love this movie so much, because it just feels kind of like a great play, like a great slice of life play, where you just kind of are with these people experiencing their relationship with them. And it's just so intimate and once again, because the dialogue, I feel like, is really, really takes center stage, and it's just so good, and they're able to just honor it and be and so effortlessly kind of be natural with it. But that naturalness still comes from just being really fantastic actors with great timing.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, so well said, Sonal. And I'm curious, this, given everything that you were just mentioning about what the actor should or shouldn't bring to the material, I think it's really interesting because, as much as I've kind of done research on where the two leads were in their careers at this point, I mean, Meg Ryan really, people maybe would have recognized her from her little role in Top Gun.
Inner Space.
So not a lot as far as like her resume of work. And then Billy Crystal, I mean, people knew him as like a pretty straight comedic actor.
Primarily stand-up.
Yeah, exactly.
Point, right?
SNL.
Yeah.
He had been on Soap, which had kind of some layers to it.
He was just in The Princess Bride.
Exactly. I mean, broad comedy in The Princess Bride.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like, how you feel about the way that they took the material, and, do you think that, they were casted well? Could somebody else have taken that on? Like, how do you and especially the chemistry between them? I'm very curious about.
Oh, that's such a good question. Like, I can't imagine anyone else in this. I mean, I guess with the exception of Tom Hanks, because let's be honest, Meg Ryan has done so many.
They're so great together. Yes,
with Tom Hanks.
They really are.
And so, but Tom Hanks still. Billy Crystal has that sardonic, kind of dry sense of humor that just felt so understated in this. And especially because he did come from such broad comedy, he really, it's like you can tell he just let it all go, and he just focused. And I love that you said it's the chemistry. I mean, the chemistry is what drives this movie, and that will they, won't they, this is the basis. Like, this is, I feel like, one of the movies that changed the landscape when it came to romance of that, just testing the waters of the will they, won't they, and the tension throughout. And even though they're going to end up together, it's still, this has that, it was just so before its time, and or I guess before its time, or of the time, in the sense that when he runs to see her,
right?
Sort of the cliche airport run, or the cliche, we see this all the time. But this was one of the first times that we saw this, and it's so hard to pull off in rom-coms, because you once again, that they're gonna end up together, but we still are like, yes, go run faster, go, no, get that taxi, we still, like, every time of like, I hope he makes it, and yeah, so gosh, could I imagine it with these classic kind of movies? It's hard to imagine with another actor, but I would like to say I would love to do this.
Yeah.
I would love to do this. I would even love to play his, like, the Harry character. This kind of.
Oh, that would be fascinating,
right? Like,
role reversal.
I don't know. Right.
No, I love that idea. I think that's
that
man.
Work.
I think somebody needs to do that idea. You need to do that idea. I mean, I know that. Well, first of all, I agree with you. Like, I will admit that. I mean, first of all, I love Nora Ephron's work. I mean, she is someone to whom I aspire. Like, she was just so good. I have a great fondness in my heart for Sleepless in Seattle. And so, like, I really do love that Meg Ryan Tom Hanks dynamic. I know that from what I read, and Derek and I joke grain of salt with everything that you read online, but that he actually was offered the role and turned it down because he didn't think there was, like, enough to it.
Wow.
Which I think is really interesting. I mean, he felt that way, especially for how early in his career he was to turn that down.
He got his Meg Ryan relationship movie, so
he did. He got 2 of them.
Joe versus the Volcano.
Oh, he got 3 of them.
Yeah.
He got 3 of them.
But I couldn't. Wow. I mean, Harry Burns basically is Billy Crystal. At least how I think of Billy Crystal is so tied with that Harry character, and in some ways, it makes me almost dislike the Harry character, because I'm like, I don't know, Harry. I don't think you're worth Sally's time. I don't know about this. This is, I mean, it took decades for her to say, like, okay, I'm used to Harry now.
Right.
But as far as the casting goes, I couldn't imagine anyone else really in either of those roles, because Meg Ryan as Sally is just perfect. And when you're talking about how understated some of the scenes are, I think the one that really stuck out in my mind is when they're dancing at the first New Year's Eve party. And there's, for maybe the first time ever, this, like, glimmer of actual, like, emotion between the two, and just the look of absolute horror on her face communicated, like, everything that was probably going on in that character's head, like, oh shit. I love that moment.
Well, I'm curious, I wanted to kind of throw this out to both of you, but Sonal, especially because of, again, kind of looking at it from an acting perspective. So first of all, tell me if you guys didn't see it the same way, because that's valid. But the way that Harry is first introduced, I mean, they really kind of put it out there immediately that these 2 people are oil and vinegar. Like, they make it really super clear. And, so you have that initial introduction to Harry. Then when we fast forward 5 years and they come across each other again at the airport and then on the plane, she has, I would say, by and large, retained the characteristics that she was introduced with, but he seems much more subdued than the way he was introduced. Like, he doesn't have that, like, same brashness anymore, where I don't know, did you guys not feel the same way about that?
I felt like his character had kind of matured a bit.
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah, he grew up like most men, like when you meet men in their, right out of college, because at first time he's basically right out of college. And
exactly.
So, he had one thing on his mind, and then he kind of calmed down after 5 years and was about to get married. And I think he really was, really in that mode of I'm settling down and I'm excited. I'm happy to be getting married.
Mm-hmm.
And he was over. And I think he mentions like he was over living the single life.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I agree with you, Derek, and that he matured like
He
there,
had
and it's
matured.
very clear.
He had taken like a big step, but that step was really just from wanting to kind of have a relationship or hook up with anyone to I'm kind of tired of that, and this person is willing to marry me, so I just don't want to date anymore. Which isn't the same as saying like I want to spend the rest of my life with
this is
with
my
this
soulmate.
person. Yeah. So he was like kind of halfway there when he saw Sally in the airport.
I just thought that it was really interesting because given the way that they met each other, it made total sense why Sally was not a fan of his. And, the way that she responded upon them reuniting, or however you want to put it, at the airport. But if they had only met for the first time at the airport, I don't think that there would have been, you know what I'm saying? I know that'd
be weird because he was just staring at her.
Well, he knew Joe. He knew Joe, her
That's
boyfriend.
True. That's a good point. Yeah.
But I just thought that was interesting because he goes through a pretty, I feel, major character shift between meeting 1 and meeting 2.
Yeah.
Where she's kind of the same person.
Yeah, you're right. Character-wise, she is the same. She's grown a little in the sense that now she has her own, she has a job and she's, traveling for work. And there is this kind of this sense of but she was sort of living, it seemed like at that point, she was kind of living her life for this Joe guy.
Right.
Like there is just still it was clear that he, was in control of the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe now, because this is a theme that I've been thinking about a lot lately, it's like almost like she thought she was ready, but she really wasn't. But I think she was still in that phase. I mean, she was only 26 probably at that, at that time. And I feel like you see more of a shift the third time we see her than when she's 32. There between that mid-20s to being 32, which is kind of, I feel like, when a lot of women grow. Whereas more of his growth happened before he decided to get married. But then of course after going through the divorce, I
thought it was really interesting the way that their characters go through these, like, I don't know. I mean, I agree with both of you. That was a much better way of putting it, his like maturity shift between meeting 1 and meeting 2. And I agree with you as well, Sonal. And I think it took like in that third time where now we see her at like 31, 32, and she's, having lunch with her friends, Marie and Alice. He
just whips out the Rolodex of men.
Yeah, I know.
Oh my God, so funny. So great.
One thing I want to say really quickly, just before we move past that scene, but Sonal, do you know who the actor who played Joe? Do you know who that is?
No,
I wouldn't expect you to, and I didn't know either. But in doing my research, so his name is Stephen Ford, as in President Ford. He is the son of President Gerald Ford.
You can see the resemblance too, like in his IMDb picture.
You totally can.
Yeah.
Isn't that so wild?
Yeah. That is crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
My favorite fact is that this person was in Starship Troopers too.
What were you gonna say? Were you gonna say something, Sonal?
Well, yeah. Was he? So was this his only? I don't know. Was this his only movie, or was he like an actor? Or
that's what is so wild. Like, I mean, he hasn't necessarily been a leading character in different projects, but he's done a ton of work. I mean, Derek just mentioned Starship Troopers. He's had bit roles in Heat, Contact, Armageddon, Black Hawk Down. Probably his most significant project is that he was on The Young and the Restless for 21 years. So
wow.
Isn't that so crazy?
That is crazy. I had no idea.
Yeah.
That is really
I just thought that was like
so
super fun.
cool.
Yeah. But so we did mention her briefly, and she is, I feel, amazing in this movie. But Carrie Fisher, and for that matter, Bruno Kirby. I mean, I'm trying to think of an example where, you know, kind of the supporting cast has had more of a dynamic character arcs. Like they're amazing. Like they are given a lot. I feel.
Yeah, I really liked Carrie Fisher as Marie because Marie. I can never say that name right. But it felt like the most real character that I've seen Carrie Fisher in, because people generally just associate her with Princess Leia and Star Wars, and she's been in other things, but it's kind of like, oh, I recognize her from Star Wars. So
of course, yeah.
What I loved about this movie was how she was like a fully realized character in the movie. So yeah, but you're right. They had a lot to do because the main characters couldn't really get through what they were getting through without them.
Right. Which is another thing, like so amazing that Nora Ephron was able to pull off these real friendships, and Marie also, I mean, one of my favorite lines in the movie, and I'm going to totally botch it, but it's when they're at the bookstore where she's like, someone's staring at you from personal growth. Yeah. And it's so funny and effortless, and also, and it's just such a genius line. And that is like, you know, you root for everybody in this movie, and they're all developed. And I think now, you know, as for me, in terms of like writing now, it's something that I think about a lot of like, okay, when I'm writing the protagonist, if let's say the protagonist is based on me, for example, and it is something, it's a challenge to think about, okay, who are these supporting characters and how do I give them their own arc and their own journey? It's not an easy thing to do. And I think Nora Ephron just does that so effortlessly. While tackling such real like themes and issues of just like Marie, you know, and the whole thing of her dating this married man, and like knowing that it's wrong and just still continuing to, and people do this all the time, and they were able to pull that off as actors without playing into the stereotype and without playing cliches. Like even Jess, when he's at dinner, Bruno Kirby, when he's, you know, so excited that she likes she, you know, repeats his line of writing. Yeah. And she quotes him. That, I mean, that's so true of course writers want themselves to be quoted. It's like that every writer wants that, but that he doesn't play into that, like the narcissistic quality of that. You know, he's just excited about it, and it's so real, and it's like so good. So I'm not adding really anything. Just
no.
I agree
you
with you.
definitely are. I mean, that's why. I mean, on so many levels, because I totally agree with you. I mean, again, I think that usually. And now it kind of swings a little bit both ways, because absolutely Marie and Jess are there to literally support the leads and help them through their own character arcs. But they're not only there for that reason.
Yes. And
they don't know that there's the supporting characters.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great way
from
of
their
putting
perspective.
It. Yeah.
Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan are the extras or supporting.
That's a great way of putting it.
That's great way of putting it.
I feel like I don't see that a lot. I think that a lot of supporting characters, they aren't given, again, as much to do outside of being, you know, the sympathetic ear, voice of reason, whatever you want to call it, to the lead. So I really appreciated that. And I, like both of you have said, felt that they were just very fully realized characters. And Sonal, you're totally right. I mean, on paper, you would think, oh, well, that's terrible that you're dating a married man. But
it was.
Sure, totally. But like the way that it is portrayed, especially by Carrie Fisher, I could, still say like, well, that's not right. You're not supposed to date somebody who's married. But she's so sympathetic because you see just kind of this like this heart sickness in her that
she knows it is.
Yeah.
She's not trying to defend it necessarily.
No.
And she's aware, like her character is aware of this situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know that to some degree it's played for laughs with the common refrain, like he's never going to leave her.
Yeah.
But
right.
I do appreciate that. And that is one thing that I always find really interesting because, I think that, I don't know, I can only really speak for like female relationships, like female friendships. But I think that it's incredibly difficult to say something challenging sometimes to somebody that you really love as a friend, because sometimes I think you refrain because you love them and you don't want to hurt them. But it is the better choice to be honest with them. And I did appreciate that, even though it's a little bit of a runner as a joke, but that Sally's like, he's never gonna like that they're really honest with each other.
You think she invited him to the wedding? What do you think happened to that relationship when
with the married guy when she married Jess?
Yeah.
I mean,
I'd like to know more about this.
I mean, that's actually one thing I really appreciate is that once she actually found a fulfilling relationship.
You never hear about that guy again.
I love that. I love that she knows that she's found the real thing. And there's no like hemming or hawing like, well, I was with this guy for so long and maybe, like she gets it.
That's how you know that they were the supporting, because they would have gone into that kind of like
true.
depth if it was like a main character focus. But that would have gone like people would have thought, no one has time for this. You found each other, let's move on.
Right.
Well, I mean, one thing I wanted to bring up that you had touched upon kind of very early into our conversation. I mean, we've kind of been talking about it all along, but this idea of how men and women communicate with each other. And I'm really curious. So, okay, like you said, this is 89. So we're about 32 years past when this film came out. And I'm just curious, do you feel like in that time, like you're right on a lot of levels, because like I feel like the way that they communicated with each other in this movie was like kind of groundbreaking, because they both were being candid with each other in a way about the very, their very friendship in a way that typically wasn't tackled, I think. I mean, I don't have exhaustive knowledge of all films and TV shows that came prior, but like I feel like this really kind of put it front and center for the first time. But do you feel like we have moved past this kind of novelty of, because you mentioned like it was just a natural part of your life that you had a lot of male friends and it wasn't a big deal.
Right.
So do you feel like we as a society have kind of moved past this, like, oh, you're really good friends with a guy? Like that's such a big, like, do you feel like we've matured in a certain regard as a society?
It's interesting because like in terms of, equality and male-female equality, as far as, women, men, boy, girl, and as just as far as straight, gay,
exactly.
Everything. I just feel like we're all in this world we've been in this world, many of us, not everybody, I should say, of equality, wanting equality, striving for equality. And so I think that is there's a, I do feel like, yes, we've kind of matured, moved past, but I also at the same time think that there is this, like, I get what he's saying in this movie of this kind of primal desire of men, that kind of exists. And he does make that statement though in the 5 years later in their second time meeting of like, oh yeah, no, but it doesn't quantify when one of them is in a relationship. And, from my experience, it's just interesting because like all the guys I grew up with all are like my brothers and they're all married now and all their wives are basically like my sisters in a way, you know, like they're, I just consider them sort of like my brother's wives. And it is never something that, you know, I don't know. I guess it's, yes, society has matured and different, but this topic is, I don't know, this topic, though it's not necessarily a topic of, I feel like, maturation. I think it's also just something that many people still kind of hold true of, like, yeah, it's still a time where it's a little, when guys and girls, I'm just trying to think of like my current guy friends who are single. And I do feel like there's a little weirdness now. Like, you know, like this, it's, and especially ones that I've met later, you know, later in life. It's that, yeah, like I wonder, you know, but I don't think it's necessarily true that like they can never be friends. But I don't know really how, I think I don't really know the answer, because I do think that even Meg Ryan, because after they sleep together, it changes things kind of for both of them. They only kind of explore how it has changed things for her. Yes. But I feel like it's changed things for him as well. And he just doesn't want to admit it yet. And I think that that's something that still happens. Like, I think it just feels very human as opposed to of the times. It feels, that's what's so special about with this movie. It just feels very human, and it doesn't feel like, oh, now she's getting attached because they sleep together and blah blah blah. I think she has every right to feel the way she feels, because he also like runs away the next morning. It's not even, he
literally has one foot sticking off the bed.
And actually, I know this is like a weird comparison, but Sonal, have you seen Reality Bites?
Yes, but I can't, to be honest, I can't talk about it. I don't remember it as much. I don't really remember it too well.
Don't sweat it. Not an 80s movie. So we won't go down. But it just reminded me of that. And like, I mean, I'm not going to say cliche, because I totally agree with you. I think it's rooted in truthfulness about how men and women might respond to a very major shift in a relationship, like sleeping together. But basically the same thing happens. Winona Ryder and Ethan Hawke sleep together, and he is out the door.
It's like, not, I feel like that is not an uncommon subject. And I think when I'm looking at When Harry Met Sally from 1989 through the lens of 2021, it feels like kind of simultaneously like this may have been one of the first times where they actually explored this topic in this way, which is in many ways groundbreaking. And yet in 2021, it's incredibly limiting by limiting this to like interaction between a straight man and a straight woman.
Yes.
So,
and everybody's very white.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot that.
This movie is, that's the one thing. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say now it's, you know, when you think about it just in like, if you tear down some of it to just how relationships change when you add that physical component to it, you know, I think there's still a lot to take from it, you know, and especially with the scene that we were just talking about when they finally do have sex and how they change after that. I think that still has value even in 2021. And I think even just the fact that it is so limiting now, it's important to think about, at the time, it certainly wasn't something that people had seen as much of.
And Sonal, just to I don't know, I won't go down this rabbit hole with my husband sitting across the table from me, but I will say that I too understand, like, if you are single and you have a male friend who is single, that there is like an undertone of yeah. Totally.
Not to say, I mean, I still have friends, but there, you know, it's just, and so I think the word maturation is not necessarily maybe the right. I'm trying to think of like what is the actual thing of, you know, to address the theme, and it's. But I do want to say one thing that you mentioned about it being white. That like yes, I feel like in a lot of ways from this movie in 1989 we have matured as a society.
Yes.
And especially over this past year with that kind of representation, because you know, but it's weird because this cast is so great, and you can't really imagine it any other way. But, you know, yes, there are no people of color in this entire movie.
None.
And they live in New York.
I think maybe the flight attendant.
Yes.
Right.
Waitress.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
the waitress. Yes.
Yep.
You're right.
That was a great look she gave Sally too. She was like,
yeah, so great. And that's the thing. It's like we are, but and you're in New York. And
exactly.
It's like, and you know, this is like, you know, a show like Friends, for example, you know, it's one of those things where the cast is so superb and you can't imagine you can't imagine anybody else in any of those roles. But it's also like, you know, a group of friends and nobody is of color and you're in New York.
What a melting pot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So yes, as far as that, though, you know, in terms of addressing the word maturation and like from this movie, it's maybe not necessarily within the theme of can men and women be friends, but more in the theme of do people of color exist in New York? And yes, the answer is yes. Like, and I think it's that, you know, when I think of this movie, and like, you know, rom-com is just, it's pretty much my favorite genre. And so when I think of writing a rom-com or doing rom-com, it just, that's something that I want to be a part of that. Like I want to be a part of that visibility and representation, because I think now it's sort of like, hey, people of color fall in love too. It's like, you know, but it's like, to be said though, that doesn't take away the beauty of this movie and the cast. It's tough for me to like be a woman of color, and maybe I don't have like an issue with this movie in that way. I don't. It's just so good, and everyone is so good in it. But I think it's sort of now, yes, if this movie came out though now,
right,
then it would be a different thing. It's like we can forgive it because it was also true to Nora Ephron's life and true to Rob Reiner. You know, I think it's like this is writers sort of write their stories, and I think the issue now is that we need to see more stories from people of color.
Absolutely.
But it doesn't take away that these stories don't exist as well.
Yeah, I think this comes up a lot with a lot of the movies that we talk about, because in some
80s movies are rife with
they haven't in all cases aged particularly well when you look at them from certain perspectives. But I think this movie does tell a story, and it tells it really well, and it's hard to fault it for what at the time would be perceived as nothing. Like people wouldn't have even really thought about it. But what's important, like you're right, if this was made now, there would very rightly be kind of an outcry. Like this is not really representative of like what we want these movies to look like. So if there's a remake where you're Harry, that's
oh my God,
where you're Harry Burns somehow, that would be amazing.
I think it would be really interesting if somebody tried to tackle a remake, because I would be so curious to see, you know, in terms of like, yes, first of all, you know, it's both very white and then very straight and very binary.
Kind of like privileged in the sense that none of the characters really at any moment are ever concerned about things like money or work. Like the closest it gets is, I gotta go to work, you gotta go to work.
Yeah, when he's trying to get out the door in the morning.
That's really it. And I feel like there are a lot of elements of just life that were taken out, and that's probably because there was so much more of an emphasis just on the relationship between these two people. But that's certainly something that you would like to see if, you know, in your remake, that's I'm just, you know.
That's actually, right. Oh, go ahead.
No, thank you. Thank you for that. Deal, noted.
I was going to say that actually, now that I'm thinking about it, because wasn't Harry like a political commentator or something?
Consultant.
Political
consultant, yeah.
I imagine that job keeps you pretty busy.
It would now.
Like, right? I mean, I feel like he has a lot of time on his hands for being somebody, and I would feel a very demanding job.
Were there?
Right.
I mean, a cell phone wasn't really a thing.
No.
That's probably the big. A lot of these movies, in some cases, the movie wouldn't even happen with a cell phone. In this movie, he would constantly be pulled away for a political consultant phone call.
That's why, for better and for worse, this movie, nowadays it would be a movie with like, should I text him? Should I not text him? How long should I wait till I text him?
Just send an emoji. It'll be fine.
Yeah. Do I send a single emoji? And, even just the scenes where they're like watching Casablanca together, or things like that. Like,
that's a Zoom FaceTime thing for sure.
It could be. It could be. But I mean, I am rarely on my phone for phone calls anymore.
Yeah, and that is so. I feel like I'm kind of like, and I feel kind of similar to you, maybe, but that like I'm an analog girl living in this digital world.
Right.
Like I'm really trying to embrace technology. We're in this weird generation. Like, it's like we didn't grow up with phones like growing out of our hands.
Exactly.
And Whereas a lot of young people, like my niece who's 9, knows how to edit and like knows how to shoot, she can make a little short film if she wanted in 2 seconds. Whereas I would be like, I don't know how to set the angle and I don't know how to do this. And so I think that's one of the reasons I love this movie so much is because there are no cell phones and we don't have to deal. I mean, it's like of course, there are pros and cons to technology, and
sure.
We're right now on technology. We're able to have this conversation. So I do, it is a gift and I'm grateful for it in many ways. But, when you watch these movies where it's just so much where people are looking up as opposed to down,
yes.
And you're connecting with each other as opposed to their phones. And I guess I'm just somebody who, I put my phone in my drawer half of the time, half of the day because I want to be, I just strive to be more present in my life, whether even I'm alone or with people, like it's just being more present. And so it's just, I just appreciate that aspect of this movie because it's just not there. The phones didn't exist, but yet it's still, funny enough, feels so modern. Like there are lots of parts of it just because the themes have, can kind of transcend time like it does. There's lots of it that feels modern, but I wish that we were living in a world still where you have to, when you call somebody and leave messages on their answering machine and you keep calling, like that's so beautiful when he's doing that. Whereas now it's like, what, you just keep texting and so at least for me, when I even think about in my own writing, sometimes I try to, I just wish, I feel like it's such a, like the phone is a character in the movie and I hate that. Like I wish that it didn't have to be like that because I think, I don't know, I'm more traditional in that sense. I just want to I want people, I want that run to the New Year's party rather than now it would be calling, or calling from your cell phone and saying, are you still there? Or I need to see, it just takes away that urgency and that the passion. And that's what we live for as humans, I feel like, or I do at least.
No, I totally agree. I mean, you said something that I clocked where you're like, they're connecting with each other instead of their phones. And I think that's so interesting because that is one thing that about like, okay, so with this movie, I don't think the characters think that this is the way that they're interacting because they don't know anything different, but they're basically forced to, if there's going to be a friendship, if there's going to be a relationship, they by and large have to interact in person with each other. There's like not a lot of other means. Yeah. They have their landlines, which were they even called them landlines then? They were just called phones.
Yeah, they were. I just call my landline. You mean your phone? Weirdo.
They're like, what's a landline? So I really like kind of keyed in on that because again, I'm thinking especially about the scene where Sally finds out that Joe is getting married. I will say that that is the one conceit that I feel, because like why would you call your ex-girlfriend unless you're just a raging asshole and be like, hey, guess what? I'm getting married.
That guy's a dick.
I mean, yeah, he was. So like,
There's no reason.
I guess there's plausibility there.
Just so you know.
Just so you know, I'm getting married. I know I told you I was never going to get married, but now I am.
You should have called, like, I'm getting married and I'm going to have kids
But,
later.
I'm thinking about how she would have found out about that in 2021, and she would have been scrolling Facebook and would have seen like an engagement post or something like that.
I mean, maybe Instagram,
maybe
something.
Instagram,
I don't know.
yeah.
Depending on the age or whatever.
So I just think that I totally agree with you, Sonal. I mean, just the visceralness, the tangibility of the way that they interact and struggle and have conflict with each other just feels much more meaningful than the way that I think it probably would be portrayed today. Because I mean, I will say that like when we watch shows nowadays, or movies for that matter, and somebody just shows up at somebody's door, I'm like, come on, who does that anymore? Like,
right.
You know,
yeah,
you just can't, as much as I think I understand why the creators are using that tactic to try to invoke that same kind of visceral interaction, that just doesn't happen anymore.
No,
so
it doesn't. And that's what, you're absolutely right. Like that catalyst of finding out that he's married and that, why would he call her? Especially because they clearly haven't talked this whole time. And so it's not like they've remained friends or anything like that. It is odd that he would call her. But then we need that. We do need that.
Exactly.
That to get to the next level in their relationship. But
we get the in-person meeting with Harry and his ex. And maybe it would have been too much to have two of these coincidences. There are a lot of coincidental meetings in this movie. So maybe that would have been the one too many. I don't know.
That's actually a very, very fair point. Yeah.
Yeah, and she also needed to be at home and be in the thick of it and like just having found out. And especially which is so great is that because she is, she's this kind of strong, confident woman. After he breaks up with her, she's like, I'm fine. I'm fine. And you really feel like she's fine, you know, but then she's just repressed it so much that it comes out when she finds out. But yeah, I'm trying to think if any of my exes have called me to tell me what they're going to
Yeah, exactly.
No,
who does that?
No one has,
like, you have
know?
to be a role, like, is it masochist?
Sadist.
Sadist.
Yeah,
just like cause pain for somebody in that way.
The masochist would be the person with the cell phone that sees the name show up and like, yeah, I'm going to answer this.
Okay, there you go. Well, then maybe that's her because she wouldn't have known. Was there even caller ID? I don't.
Oh gosh, that's so true.
Yeah,
we would answer the phone and not know.
Hello, who is this?
That's crazy. That is so crazy. Can you believe we lived in that time?
It's so wild.
There were definitely times when the phone ringing, I'm like, I just don't feel like whoever it could be. No.
And the thing is that was acceptable. Right. I mean, that's that is something that's interesting to me. Again, on that last viewing, I mean, I get it because they very much cared for each other. I mean, pre-sleeping together, obviously they had become very close friends.
Yeah.
And it doesn't surprise me at all that as soon as she called him and said like, Joe's getting married, he's like, I'm coming right over.
Yeah.
But I also feel like that is, again, a little bit something of its time because like nowadays, you'd set your phone to do not disturb and
but she would have been set up as one of his favorites.
Maybe,
so it would have rung through. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, there's just so many more ways for people to not interact with each other nowadays because of technology.
The one scene that I think would have actually been more realistic for me, but also slightly different, the scene after Harry and Sally both call Jess and Marie, and they just happen to have like their own landline phone on either side of the bed.
I thought that was really funny.
Yeah.
I love that scene, but also if they each just had a cell phone on either side, they just would have been like furiously texting and then talking to each other.
Yeah, that's true too.
Right. It would have been texting. Yes.
Yeah.
You're
I think that still could have worked.
I did clock that too. I was like, oh, that's so interesting that Jess and Marie have separate phone numbers.
Separate, like, look at these fancy people.
Yeah,
It's
very
landline.
very fancy. Apparently, again, grain of salt.
Right. I didn't even think about that. Yes, you're
so
right.
funny?
Like that they have different.
Yeah.
Wow. See, but what's so great about this movie is that you forget, like, I mean, hello, When Harry Met Sally is one of the classic movies of all time, and they were able to get away with these kinds of things. And as far as when we're digging deep now and talking about these things, that it's like, yeah, but they got away with it. And it's just, I feel like then in terms of my own creating and people's creations, it's just like, we should know that we can like take those kinds of risks. It's okay. And that you can, as long as they're justified, that's the most important thing. And I feel like you were about to say something. I may have cut you off.
Oh, not at all. Actually, I'm curious. No, you gave me a second to ask a follow-up question, which I think would be interesting. So in your career, what can you remember what was the most number of takes you ever did for a scene?
On actually on set, or in when I'm doing an audition?
I guess it could be either. This is a very leading question. There's a reason why I'm asking. Yeah.
So it's interesting because I heard this something the other day. Somebody said like perfectionism takes away humanity, something like that. Or it's that,
I believe that.
On set, I feel like there's different types of directors. Like some directors will want you to, will do a take over and over and over again until you've kind of stripped away the energy of, and like that excess energy that we all have as artists, that it strips away until it's raw. And then you get that real visceral rawness. And then the opposite is that you take the first take, because that's what the most, it's sort of the most spontaneous. It feels the most real and kind of imperfect and messy. And so on set, typically for me, the things that I've done on it, I would say it's usually 2-3 takes max.
Okay.
And you just have to kind of trust that if the director says we're moving on, then that they got it. As an actor, that's sort of in that world of collaboration and being there, I feel that's probably the most, is maybe 4 takes. But we're also talking about, this is per setup. So per close-up, per the wide, maybe you do 2 takes. Let's say we do a 2-shot, maybe 2-3 takes, and then a close-up, maybe more, 3-4 takes for that. Now, when I'm doing auditions and putting things on tape, it is interesting. Back in the day, I would do it, I would kind of like do it over and over until I feel like I got it. And now that we're in this world of self-taping even more, I honestly usually try to do 3 or 4 takes max, because it, I don't want to strive for that perfection. Like, and I'm kind of at that point where I think I trust myself more, in the sense that, and I trust the work that I've already done. And so then like when whoever is casting it's watching it, my hope is that, they'll see, like, is this, do I have the essence or not? And that's it. And then it's like, I feel like I already, like each take, like I might notice, I'll watch my tapes back, and well, one thing I was going to say is that I coach actors too. I coach through John Rosenfeld Studios. And so one thing I tell my actors that I coach often is that I watch you, and I kind of am always asking myself, do I believe it? Do I believe what you're saying? And am I interested? As a general questions. And then of course, like, are they honoring the character? Are they honoring the given circumstances? Do they have a strong moment before and a moment after? Those kinds of things, for sure. I feel, so that's sort of what I do though, when I watch my tapes back, is that, do I believe it, or and am I interested? And Yeah, but then if it's like yes, if the answer is yes for 3 takes in a row, but I do one thing in one take and another thing in another take, I feel like at that point it can't really matter. You know, you can't.
Yeah.
You got to let go of. Just got to let it go and hope and not focus on the result and send it out and move on with your life.
I really love listening to you talk about kind of your process. And
Yeah.
it's so interesting. The reason why I was asking is because now I know that part of this was it had to have been just timing for like timing purposes. But that phone scene between the 4 of them,
yeah.
apparently they had to do 60 takes.
Holy cow.
60.
Wow.
That was a complex.
To nail that.
There was a lot going on.
Yeah.
That. There
is a lot going on. And also, and I feel like I notice when there are more people in a scene, there is that you gotta, it's so much more challenging to make sure everyone is on the same wavelength and the timing is so important, and listening and all of that, and to get everybody on the same page then and married then to the DP and to the director and to the sound and to and make sure nobody's really talking over anyone else and all of that. I think I'm not surprised that took 60 takes. And
it's like a dance. It's a coordinated dance. Which I was thinking like, man, I mean, I'm sure some of those takes is like maybe somebody blew the very first line or, so like maybe some of them, it's not like they got to almost the end.
60 full takes.
Yeah, 60 full takes. So I don't think that happened. But I was just like, wow, I feel like you have to really dig deep when you're on like take 57.
It's work.
And yeah. No, absolutely. But Sonal, this was just so much fun talking to you about this.
Likewise. It's really, this is such an honor and a treat for me. I love, it's interesting because I didn't really watch the movie from an actor's perspective, but I think I do naturally watch things from an actor's perspective,
sure,
and from a storytelling perspective. So it's really interesting to kind of look at the movie broken down in this way, and it's so much fun because it's literally one of my favorite movies of all time and one of my favorite genres of all time. I love that world, and I love.
And we love you. You are amazing.
I love you.
It was really just such our pleasure to have you on the show. And again, it felt like an honor for us because, again, it is fascinating to listen to somebody kind of talk through just this particular, I mean, all kinds of art form, but I just love listening to actors talk about like what they're thinking and how they prepare.
Like your perspective on a lot of this stuff. And this is coming from someone who by far has the most layperson's knowledge of any of this stuff. So I really enjoyed like hearing more about like your process and how, that was great.
It was really, really great. And on that note, I would love, and Derek would love, if you would want to share with our listeners, like what projects you might have going on at this time.
Sure. I, live in the post-pandemic life. I am, I'm an actor through and through. I used to kind of hide that, I think, more, but it's who I am. And I would even venture to say a storyteller. And I love stories. I think that they have the power to transform lives. And I really strongly believe in that representation matters, and that people of color need to start and continue to be seen and heard and be made more visible. So that being said, I'm currently working on a bunch of my own projects. Like I just finished writing a pilot, and I coach actors at John Rosenfeld Studios. voice and sing on Mirror Royal Detective, and I've done some voice work on a couple other shows too, but I don't know if I'm allowed to say what they are yet. And then I have a development deal with my friends Parvesh China and Sheila Srinivas with Disney, and then I continue to work on my own stuff all the time. And then I'm a learner, and I feel like I'll be learning for life and always just trying to get better and grow as an actor. And so I do that. I read scripts and sides pretty much every day. And so that's sort of, and I try to create content. I'm working right now. I'm starting something called the Shakti Life, which is basically meant to make you yours, and I just feel like we're living in a time when we need to, especially women, need to step into their power and be willing to risk and be uncomfortable for the greater good, because we need everyone's love. We need everyone's unification. If there's one thing that came out of quarantine, is that that we all love being together. We love, and we're stronger together. And so. Yeah, so these are the things that I'm working on, and this was such a pleasure and honor for me to chat with you both.
Oh my goodness! I mean, Derek
I'm really
and I,
grateful.
We joke a lot about this being like a 6-hour podcast, but at the risk of being redundant, like, it's just so lovely to listen to you talk about your work.
This was really great.
Yeah, it really was. So again, thank you so much for being on the show, and just the best of luck. So much success, I hope, comes your way in the future.
Thank you. Vice versa. Thank you so much.
Isn't she the best?
She really is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Sonal.
Thank you for being with us. We had the best time with you. All right, Derek, I'm actually very curious about the answer to this question.
Yeah.
Would you watch this film again?
I mean, probably not.
Derek.
If it's on, it depends on where it's on. If I was just like flipping through channels and I saw it, I might watch it depending on where it's at. There are a lot of like laugh out loud moments in it. So it's possible, but am I gonna seek it out to watch it? I am not.
You're not gonna seek it out. Okay.
I'm not.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But I do know, when you talk about laugh out loud moments, I know that you guffawed when Jess and Marie really quickly ditch Harry and Sally in the cab.
Well, okay. So I'm not going to disclose any names, but they're I have experienced something not exactly like that, but there was a moment where I was with friends and we were out, and two people had met for the first time, and there was a, should I do this? Should I do that? And there was a strong recommendation. No, just be cool. And then they take off in a cab.
Okay.
Which led to the guffaw.
That I think is a huge compliment to the film.
Because that really happened.
That really happened.
Yes.
Yeah. So there you go. I mean, for me, so if I can't even remember the last time I was just like, I have absolutely nothing to do, so I'm just going to sit and watch a movie. But it's usually, especially whatever during the day, maybe a film is on in the background while we're doing. Yeah. So this is definitely a movie where if I came across it, I would just leave it on.
Yeah. And
continue to watch it until its completion. But I'd probably be doing something else. Because this is also, okay, so the big difference between you and me is that I'm really familiar with this film. Like, I've seen it a lot. That's so a good point. It's kind of gotten to a place with me where, like, it's like a background movie.
Yeah.
Whereas with you, I feel like if you had it on, you'd be like watching it again. That's a good point. And I probably would be, because it's not as familiar to me. Yeah. So In any case, still a great movie. So, listener call to action. Now, you had a couple, so I might just defer to you.
I've already forgotten them.
Oh, come on. I mean,
I'm not even joking.
Remember? Oh, man.
They weren't really specific to the movie, I don't think. I don't know.
I was really banking on you remembering those. I mean, I guess I would say that my call to action, I kind of usually pull from just whatever the subject matter is of the film. So I'm just curious about where people stand on the whole, and another thing that I was actually, I meant to bring up with Sonal.
Oh, wait, what?
Yeah, I know. Sorry, I'm jumping around. But is, like not too long ago, what was it? Late 90s when that huge book came out, Men Are From Mars, Women Are For Venus.
Yeah.
I feel like that kind of continues this train of thought.
It's similar. So
Yeah.
There's a parallel going on there.
Exactly. I meant to bring that up with her. But so, I mean, that's more recent than the film. Like I said, I think that was 90s. In any case, I'm just curious what people think. Like, do you have a lot of friends who are of, the opposite sex or whatever, just somebody who, you know what I'm saying?
I do.
Yeah. So I'm just curious what people think about that kind of relationship.
I think that's a solid call to action.
You're not going to offer one up of your own, are you? Okay.
I've offered up a couple already, and listeners are welcome to return to that portion of the podcast. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. So if you do want to get in touch with us, we would love to hear from you. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And it's the same handle for all three. It is at 80s Montage Pod, and 80s is 80S. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Sneak peek. Coming up in 2 weeks.
Is it another Rob Reiner film?
No, it's not another Rob Reiner.
It's not?
I don't know. No. It's actually a movie that I'm surprised we're halfway through our second season. Mm-hmm. There's lots of movies from the 80s, but this is one that I'm just really glad that we're finally getting to it because it's a great film and it's very, very indicative of the 80s.
Really? Okay.
And one of its biggest stars.
Oh.
And you have no idea what I'm talking about.
I'm waiting for more clues.
Okay, would a clue, is this what?
Who's its star?
No, I'm not giving you that.
That would give it away?
I'm not giving you that clue.
Okay.
Yeah, because it would obviously give it away. Oh, I'll give you a clue that maybe you would know. Detroit.
Oh, it's RoboCop.
No.
Dang.
Think of a different Detroit connection. We are getting a RoboCop soon. But
yeah.
Think of a different Detroit connection.
It's not Dr. Detroit. That was 70s, I think. I don't even think that was
Okay,
80s.
so maybe I have to add a couple more words. Detroit to L.A.
Detroit to L.A. Oh my God. This is not
Derek. Danky. Beverly Hills Cop.
Oh yeah. Man. I feel like I just fell for a banana in a tailpipe.
Well, that's what I was also. That would have been a better clue.
No, well, that would have been giving it away.
That'd be giving it away.
If you had said Eddie Murphy, that would have. If you had said Judge Reinhold, that'd be a.
I was thinking of it, but would you have said Beverly Hills Cop or would you have said Fast Times?
I would have thought of Fast Times, but then I would have thought maybe that's just what she wants me to say.
I'm tricking you.
Beverly Hills Cop coming up next.
Coming up in 2 weeks. So thank you so much for hanging with us, and we will see you next time.